back to the Bold Podcast. I'm Todd Birch, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this inspiring journey of personal growth and leadership. Together with my guests, we'll dive into transformational stories, uncovering how small, intentional changes can create massive positive results in your life. From overcoming challenges and setting impactful goals to building lasting habits and living with confidence, health, and positivity, we'll explore it all. And if you're ready to embrace a growth mindset and unlock the best version of yourself, then let's spark that transformation today. Today's guest is Scott Hubble. Scott is a self-described pragmatic optimist, forward-failing servant leader, lifetime learner, and practitioner of the mantra that people matter most. After collecting an accounting degree, a JD, and MBA, Scott made his mark on the RV industry over the past 17 years with both nuCamp and Little Guy. His expertise lies in managing people, processes, and technology while interpreting market dynamics and authoring effective marketing, sales, and product strategies. He has a proven track record of turning boutique companies into niche powerhouses by identifying unredeemed opportunities within the space through product distinction and building a strong community. Scott lives in Berlin, Ohio with his wife and 5 children. Scott, welcome to the Bolt Podcast, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me, Todd. It's a pleasure.
Wow, that is a lot. That was a mouthful. You have quite the CV. I'll say that. Wow. A true passion for academia, right?
Yes. Hey, you can never learn too much.
Right.
And none of us know everything, right?
Right. Self-proclaimed lifelong learner, which a lot of the guests on the show, we are big-time learners, right? We never stop learning. It's all about the growth. So let's talk about your academic experience, because it's a lot. And you went through a couple different phases, from engineering to accounting to law, and then got your MBA.
Sure. Yeah, I was leaving high school, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. Had an opportunity to pursue a scholarship at Cedarville University in electrical engineering. So redeemed that, but after about a year, I figured out I am not an electrical engineer. And in the meantime, my parents had moved to Akron, so I just moved home, and I started taking courses at Akron and went to the College of Business, and I needed to declare a major. And again, I was uncertain. So what I did at that point, I sought some counsel from my father. He's like, look, accounting's one of the 5 professions. It's solid. There's always work there. And I said, all right, I'll be an accountant. And as I was starting my senior year, I figured out I don't want to be an accountant. But, saw the degree through and applied for law school. Went to law school, and again, it's like we're watching a replay, right? I did the first year, which is the toughest year of law school, and I realized I don't want to be a lawyer. But I did the next 2 years, got the degree, but in the interim, I started my MBA, and that's where everything started hitting for me. And I was like, this is easy, this is fun, this is who I am, this is what I'm supposed to do. So then I was equipped with all the degrees, and even though I wasn't going to practice law or get into the field of accountancy, it had trained my brain to think in systematic ways and apply those processes in the things that I would encounter down the road. So it really helped round me out and be prepared for, the unknown and to pursue larger things than perhaps I would have originally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, talk about well-rounded, especially for somebody who's going to either start their own business or run a business. I think it's a good life lesson too, right? We have a lot of students getting ready to graduate here in May, and they're probably wondering, did I make the right choice? They're worried about getting their first job. I think the one thing that I can see here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a genuine curiosity for life and learning, right? And you just kept going until you found something that felt comfortable to you. I think that's important in life.
Absolutely. Not all of us have the same degree of curiosity, but I believe that all of us do want to find something we're passionate about. And, whether that is obvious to you, or if it's something you need to go on a journey to discover, one way or the other, don't stop until you find it, because there's nothing worse than just, punching in from 9 to 5 and not really embracing what you're doing.
Right. Absolutely. I know earlier when we talked, and I listened to a podcast that you were on, this time period in life from 18 to 35 was, it seems like a time where you built some true resilience, went through some things. You want to share some of that time period and what that was like and how that really helped you build into the leader that you are today?
Sure. Yeah. I think all of us in one way or the other are byproducts of what happens to us or the choices that we make. And during that period of time, I encountered a vast number of trials. And I really felt that in one degree or another, I had experienced bankruptcy in every facet of my life.
Oh, wow.
Whether it was physically, I was on life support at Akron General. Whether it was financially, I didn't have 2 nickels rubbed together and I owed a bunch of nickels. Whether it was socially, when I was younger and maybe I felt like I didn't have any real friends. Whether it was spiritually and I was just, hey God, I know you're there, but I'm just sort of playing a game and I'm lonely. I think at every facet that you looked at, I was at ground zero at some point. And what that taught me was, hey, look, when you're down, you can really only look up. And when you look up, you can see the blue sky, you can see the opportunity. It also teaches you to be malleable and to roll with life circumstances, and that this too shall pass. And, the trials haven't stopped. Recently, my house burned down.
What?
Yeah. 3 of my children were diagnosed with autoimmune diseases. And, my wife's had some struggles with health. But it's funny because we're just like, okay, what's next? What's next? And, a lot of these things would cripple people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not that I'm stronger. It's just that I've had the privilege, quote unquote, to go through them and develop that resilience and the ability to bounce back and be elastic.
Wow. Oh, there's a lot to unpack there. Oh, yeah. Wow. And I'm sorry to hear about what you had to go through. Unfortunately, and we've all been through something, right? It's just a matter of what degree of adversity we've gone through. And a lot of people on this show have been through quite a bit, and they've transformed. But, I always talk about just finding the gift and the opportunity in every scenario, just being open, right? There's a gift there. Hard to find the gift when the house burns down or when you're on life support, but it is there, right? And turn that into an opportunity to rebuild a new home or a fresh start, right? A fresh slate. So yeah, that's quite a bit. Going back to childhood, I understand your father was an FBI agent.
He was.
I was not aware of that when we first spoke. So how did that definitely had a major influence on you? Well, obviously he's your father, but being an FBI agent, I would imagine, what was that like growing up?
So he was not an agent when I was, say, 10 to 15 years old. He was an agent when I was younger. So I didn't take in a lot of, those experiences at that time. However, the fact when he was, in the Air Force, in the FBI, and then he grew up in the household of a Baptist minister, when you take that combination, here's how it impacted me. I grew up in an extremely strict household, a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, a lot of performance to come up with. So, that helped ingrain a lot of responsibility and discipline. So I don't have any cool stories to share with you, with respect to him being an agent. But I do have all that byproduct from the environment that he fostered. Wow,
that's crazy. So let's talk a little bit about your journey through your career. Once you got through college and you got all these degrees and you've kind of figured out, okay, business is my passion and I can pull all of this learning together to help me. Take us through these companies so you really embrace the RV industry and what that looked like from little guy to nuCamp, and then we'll talk about your new business.
Sure. Yeah, I'll back up for a second. So, I'm leaving college. I had a host of leadership experience. I was student body president. I had all these degrees, and I thought the world would be waiting for me. And I stepped out to the world, and I was like, all right, guys, fight over me. And
isn't that funny how that works?
Yeah, right? Crickets.
Yeah.
So
that's humbling.
Yeah, it was.
Right.
I've had quite a number of humbling experiences in my life, and they're fantastic.
Yeah.
I've learned to really embrace them. But instead, what I had to do, I had to pivot, right? And I took a couple jobs that technically I would be overqualified for. I worked for the state of the auditor's office for the state of Ohio. I worked for a marketing firm for a year, and the thing that actually helped open the door to pursuing RV is that I started doing things before work and after work. And at first it was sorting packages at FedEx and delivering pizzas, managing a pizza shop. But then it started being like, hey, you know what? Why don't I be a little smarter about this? And a buddy of mine and I started doing some marketing initiatives, little small things for small companies.
Okay. Like freelance work?
Yeah. Okay. And one day he came to me and he said, hey, look, I opened up a conversation with a company called Little Guy Worldwide, and they are the world's #1 distributor of teardrop trailers. And I said, okay. And he said, I sold him a website, and I told him that we're going to make their web traffic just explode. I said, all right. He said, you're going to make their web traffic explode. So that was the door. That was the opportunity that we walked through. And, fortunately, we were able to make that happen. The internet was sort of the Wild West still in that period of time, the 2008 period.
Oh, yeah.
Not a lot of algorithms in place in social media.
SEO,
Yeah, so I just drove traffic like a madman. They loved it. They said, what else can you do? So then I was able to dip in on some of my skill set.
Yeah.
And it was a very small organization. And just a handful of people, mostly sales and bookkeeping type.
Okay.
So I came in with a skill set that wasn't there, and I was able to look at, what are these marketing programs? What's your pricing structure look like? Who's your manufacturer? What does the product look like right now? And then do some assessments of the market, assessments of the product, assessment of adjacent markets, so on and so forth. And what we realized was that the product we were receiving was really just bereft of innovation. It was bereft of quality. And if we really wanted to take the next step and be something of significance, we needed to up the game. And that's when when I actually had the opportunity to meet a man named Joe Mullet, who owned a company named Pleasant Valley Teardrop Trailers that was in Sugar Creek, Ohio. And I had seen a couple of his trailers, and they were very retro-y, great looking, high quality. And I said, this is the type of manufacturing that we need in order to take the next step. So we entered into some conversations with him, and then the two companies, Little Guy Worldwide and Pleasant Valley Teardrop Trailers, came together into an agreement for a manufacturer and distributor. And it was a really fun time for me, because I'm being able to do all these marketing campaigns that I just loved and was fun, and driving a Facebook account to over 100,000 followers, and feeling good about that kind of stuff. But then learning some of the manufacturing side, and I would work a couple days down in Sugar Creek and then a couple days up in the Canton area, and the business just exploded. It just went crazy, and the contract was running out in around 2017, and the owners of both companies really enjoyed the success. But I let them know. I said, guys, this is fantastic. However, we've grown too big to just stay in this same structure, because the end user is going to end up footing the bill for an extra unnecessary layer. You guys either need to merge, or one of you buy out the other one, whatever. An agreement was not able to be reached. So at that point in time, I had to make a choice. Do I want to stay at a distributor where we're marketing and selling, which is fun, but we're not creating?
Right.
Or would I go on the manufacturing side, where we can create and innovate and then start fresh with the marketing, the sales, the customer support. And that was the option I chose. And when I chose that, I knew we needed to have a real name, not Pleasant Valley Teardrop Trailers, because you made teardrop trailers on Pleasant Valley Road.
Right.
But rather, hey, nuCamp. And why nuCamp? Well, it's a new start. We spelled it N-U with an umlaut on top, to tip our hat to the German heritage of the Amish. And then camp to basically say, you know what? We're honoring the industry that we're playing in. And so, a side hustle opened the door to get into Little Guy. And then the little Guy's success with Pleasant Valley opened the door to me to step into that role, which became, far more encompassing than what I was in. And we had a team of 200 people. We made over 3,700 trailers, created a lot, met a lot of people. The vision never stopped. And, that prepared me for the opportunity to where I'm at today. So I don't know if you had any questions along the way. I always leave things out.
Yeah, no.
There's different versions of the story.
No, that's great.
That's basically it.
Yeah, but and we'll go into kind of where you're at now. I love the story. I think it's very interesting. I love how it was kind of by happen chance. But do you believe in fate, that everything happens for a reason?
I'm a man of faith. So, yeah. So even when I'm going through all those scenarios, I'm like, hey, you know what? Am I going to let, my circumstance define me and my circumstance, control my view of God?
Right.
Or do I know something more than that?
Right.
Yeah. Right place, right time. Luck is created, right? Sometimes ordained.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you came into nuCamp, did you come in as CEO or were you in another role and worked your way up?
No, I came in as CEO.
Okay.
I always say, sometimes titles overstate things.
Right.
I think eventually I moved into an actual CEO title, whereas when it was bestowed upon me, if you analyzed it, no, I wasn't doing all those things that I should have been doing.
Sure.
But
you grew into
growth.
it. Yeah. Wow. And you did that for, 8 years?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Best 8 years. Loved it. I would always tell people I've got the best job on the face of the planet. Dream job. Loved it. And, we all have chapters. We all have seasons. And it was a great, great time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about, because I don't think everybody knows what a teardrop trailer is, right? It's still, they are somewhat rare, right? I don't say only. I mean, it's still manufacturing a little under 4,000 is a lot locally, but I camped for a little while and you didn't see a whole lot of them. When you saw them, you're like, ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right? They were very different. And I will say the design is incredible. The engineering is incredible. Like these, if you ever get a chance, if anyone's interested in camping or owning a trailer, a small trailer, and I believe you probably don't need a heavy-duty truck to pull these things, which is the beauty of it. One of my early trailers back when I was younger was a Coleman pop-up, that I pulled on my Cavalier, my Chevy Cavalier, which looked a little ridiculous, but hey, it worked. I pulled that thing down to Florida a couple times.
Wow.
But I think telling the audience a little bit about teardrop and really, how you took this, because I think it was understated that you took a kind of a dying industry, right, an underserved industry, and infused new life into it and made it really successful, which is pretty cool. And I think you're a guy, you love challenges. Right? Mm-hmm. You walk into the face of a challenge and you're not afraid. And I think that's a beautiful thing, for people to do, if you can, right? Not everybody can do that. Not everybody is open to risk, but you were, and you went for it. So, sorry, tell us, just a little bit about Teardrop and just a little more in depth about the history and what you did to that industry.
Sure. Like you said, most people don't know what it is. I used to say 1 out of 100 people knew what it was. I certainly wasn't one of the 100. I was one of the 99, right? I think those numbers are probably down to maybe 1 out of 50.
Okay.
Yeah, there's been a lot of education over the last 15 years, a lot of growth in the space. When I first came into Little Guy, I think they had distributed 341 units that year, and that was their best year ever. And when you looked around at their competitors, quote unquote, it was, a bunch of trailers being built in garages across the country with no more than about 50 or so from any one operation.
So not really a lot of competitors.
Yeah. I would tell you that the market probably was in that 500 to 700 range in terms of being consumed, and most of them were retail direct.
Okay.
There wasn't anything, like dealers.
Right.
You didn't see them on RV lots.
Right.
So that's really emerged over the last, 10 to 15 years. We were able to grow that, I think, a lot organically, right, through community, through social, driving that. And then slowly that word of mouth, building it the right way with the innovations that people wanted, in a high quality fashion, just really helped get that ball rolling. So a teardrop trailer actually originated after one of the world wars, where they were using scrap from, Jeeps and sunken ships and all kinds of stuff just to get out there in a cheap way. So essentially, they're called bed on wheels a lot of times. Teardrop, because it's sort of the shape of a teardrop.
Right.
Turn 90 degrees and put a pair of wheels on it, right? Really neat. It's absolutely exploded here. I'd say, I was telling you, around 500 to 700 was probably the ceiling of the market when I first got exposed to it. And even now in the down market, the last couple of years in the RV industry, it's been that 4,000 to 5,000 range.
Wow.
There's been a lot of players lately. I will tell you that the definition of teardrop trailer has evolved over the past 5 years. So, just like in life in other areas, the name teardrop, which was fashioned from a shape, no longer harkens to the shape, it harkens to the size. So now you got a bunch of square drop trailers, so same size, same weight, more cubic feet actually, because they're not slimlined in the back.
Right.
But it's tenfold from what it was.
Wow.
And now you do see them at the general RVs and camping worlds of the world. So yeah, just a lot of growth. I think you had asked another question in there.
Just the engineering.
Okay.
The shape is so unique. It has to be, right? Every camper wants the basic necessities, right? And to fit that in there, looking at it, honestly, I would say, how did you do it?
Yeah.
Because I've been in other campers, even the little Coleman that I bought during COVID. It was, to get everything in there in a way that you could sleep, eat, cook, use a restroom, take a shower, all those things in this little tiny teardrop is interesting to me.
Yeah, and that was an evolution in and of itself. When I first, saw one, it was you open the door, and there was a floor where they had a trifold mattress and some overhead cabinetry and a roof vent. So there wasn't electric, there wasn't even a power fan, and then there certainly weren't some of the things that we ended up putting in: sinks, stoves, fridges. Eventually, we actually grew the teardrop into a larger, shape, and we're able to put in wet baths. So you could get everything you needed within a really small footprint, and then hook it up to your RAV4 and take off. Right.
That's cool. They're beautiful. The craftsmanship.
Oh, yeah.
Talk a little bit about it, because I had a Coleman. I bought a Coleman camper during COVID, which was, phenomenal. I think a lot of people did that. And obviously the RV industry boomed at that time, right? And I was one of those that added to that boom. And the family and I traveled, Ohio, and it was great just to be able to get out of the house, right? We definitely got a great return on investment on that. But, when I get inside, it wasn't really built with quality, honestly. And nothing against Coleman. A lot of the campers are like that. It's just, shoddy. If you moved one way or bumped this, something would fall off. And but when you look at the nuCamps, I mean, these are wood. We're talking real wood and the craftsmanship. So talk just a little bit about that. Was that because of the Amish influence? Because we know that they're well known for top-notch craft.
Absolutely. So a couple different levels, right? Those first units that I saw that were being built out in Indiana, they had wooden floors, wooden sidewalls, skin the roof with aluminum and skin the sides with fiberglass. But they were wooden in their infrastructure, and the cabinets were MDF. Well, when we started working down in Sugar Creek with the Amish, there is that furniture-rich tradition,
right,
and we're going to bring in real wood cabinetry. And while we started with some wooden walls on the sidewalls and the floor for the infrastructure and whatnot, we also said, you know what? We are people of integrity, and we want to build with integrity, and we want to build things that last. And so we started looking at composites. And then, when I left nuCamp, we had been using composite sidewalls, floors, roofs for several years. So now you're not dealing with the rot that a lot of the traditional stick and tins are. You're bringing it and then you're fusing it. So, right, I can't remember how I used to always say it, but we would take European designs and fuse it with Amish craftsmanship. So we would take all the sleek lines, we take the composite materials, and then we bring in the beautiful cabinetry and just make a real premium product. Something to really be proud of.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, that sounds like a winner right there, combining those two. So Scott, let's talk a little bit about your leadership. So you, in the culture that you built at nuCamp, how many employees did you have when you guys were in kind of your high time there?
Yeah, we had crested just over 200.
Okay. That's a lot of humans to be responsible for, right?
Yeah, there was sort of a running joke, that I wanted to know everybody's names, but there was probably a good 30 or 40 I just didn't know. So it was, hey, how you doing? And that's where some of that leadership comes in,
right,
because you need to care genuinely. And the question is, can you care genuinely if you don't actually know who they are? So a little bit of a struggle, a little bit of a balance to achieve there. Something I absolutely worked on. But yeah.
How did you build a culture of success? I know you guys probably went through some difficult times. How did you build resilience with the team? How did you cultivate a culture of growth and opportunity?
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, I was never alone. I guess the patriarch who founded Pleasant Valley Teardrop Trailers with Joe Mullet, former Amish minister, just a shepherd's heart, just a fantastic guy. And then, of course, there was other leaders along the way that helped supplement the journey. But one thing that I guess sort of evolved in me over the years, coming out of academia, using my analytical and assessment tools and the systems that were provided, I was able to do things that little guy. But in those first few years, I realized, something's more important than the product, because I was always like, hey, the product, that's what's going to win it. And what wins it is people. And it really made me, reflect and develop the idea, people matter most. And, the level of care, when you tell and show your people that you care, then they care. And now you're caring for them. They're caring for the company. And you're all caring about the product because you're caring about the end user. And I think that level of care is infectious, right? When you feel wanted, you act in a different way, right? The level of care instills trust, which then creates an environment where there's psychological safety, which, really enables or empowers somebody to take the autonomy that they're granted and to act with confidence. So you've heard all these things, and it really is a domino effect. And sometimes the dominoes can fall in different ways. For me, it was really just a journey of discovering that people matter more than profit, than product, than, possessions, or it doesn't matter what it is. Life's about people. They're the driver. Talk a little about the success. Like, hey, the success was largely in part to the products and the community. Well, I always thought it was the product, and it actually is the community. The community can kill things. It can propel things. Mm-hmm. Inside, it's the same. People can propel the growth. They're the fuel to the fire. I might start the fire, and people start hulling up and getting warm, but they're the ones that can really, make that thing roar, and they did.
Wow. That was beautifully stated. I think I align with that very much in the way that I run my business, or at least I try. Certainly, that was an evolution over time. Mm-hmm. Running a business, a marketing agency, 16 years, a lot fewer people, but making a lot of mistakes along the way. But I think the key is being humble, and not being afraid to take a risk or fail, but being open and learning from it. And that's really what I've done, asking for 360 feedback and really being genuine, and earnest about it, and then taking that feedback and taking action. That's what the employees want to see. A lot of times they just want to be heard. They just want to be noticed. And it's time, right? It's time. So how do you devote that time? And obviously 200-300 people, you're not going to be able, as much as anybody would want to know John and Susie and everybody's name and their family and what they love to do. It's just not feasible, right? Mm-hmm. But the caring piece is feasible. Were there any strategies that you put into place that related to that caring piece?
I don't know if I'd call them strategies per se,
tactics.
But it was, I think I had to be very intentional mm-hmm. with my time. I would actually get on my calendar and schedule time to walk out in the shop. Hey, go visit line 1, or go visit the mezzanine, go visit the repair shop, go hobnob down with the marketing team. And, authenticity is super important. But just because I'm intentionally forcing myself to go somewhere doesn't mean that once I'm there, I'm not authentic.
Right.
So I think number one, being intentional about that, visiting. And then the second thing was really just sort of like reinforcing it with myself, reinforcing the idea people do matter most. People do matter most. And, because you can grab onto anything and it's great for a season. And then you find something new and you grab onto that and you grab onto that. But this is timeless. It really is. So reinforcing that truth, that eternal truth, through different voices. And, there's servant leadership voices, Greenleaf, modern, Cynic or Maxwell, and, just talking and learning more about maybe the scientific elements of empathy, where it's not just feeling bad for somebody or understanding what they're going through, but going that next level and saying, okay, I get it. How can I help you? Like that's the last part of being empathetic that is so often left out. Like being sympathetic is not anywhere close. That's having pity on somebody or, oh, that's too bad.
Right.
But I don't know. So reinforcing some of those principles just through different voices and hearing it packaged in a different way and keeping that truth fresh all the time. So I was keeping myself honest, to that end.
Yeah, I love it, being intentional. A lot of leaders on the show talk about scheduling and really mastering their calendar and setting aside those blocks, those chunks of time. And again, it's time, but the day goes by quick. And if you don't have a cadence, right? And again, you have to show up in an authentic way, like you said. But the first step is just being intentional, knowing that this is important. Yes, I have 15 other things I need to do, and I'm sure as CEO you wore a lot of hats, but people matter most. I need to go out there. I need to be seen, and I need to see my people and talk with them and let them know that I care. So I'm sure that was a huge part of the success, and I appreciate that servant leadership, which you went to school for as well. I'm interested to learn more about the program at Columbia that you went through. Right? Was that?
Yeah, it was actually Columbia Southern.
Southern, yeah.
I wish it was Columbia.
Yeah,
Do I?
sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. So a lifetime learner, what's next, what's natural, what makes sense, the best fit, what can elevate my thinking. And I had an opportunity to start on a doctoral degree. So I started some of the coursework. And then as I entered into, the writing phase, as chapter 1, that's when the house fire started. And that's when my kids got the diseases. And inevitably, I was unable to finish it. You only have a certain period of time before the door closes. But what drew me, obviously, was that, I was in this environment down in Sugar Creek, Ohio. And my thesis was actually on, Amish manufacturing and how that, I guess, played into servant leadership. Because I think it's a different dynamic in any atmosphere that you go to. So the principles remain the same, but how is it accomplished in Central Ohio, Los Angeles, El Paso, Texas? It can look differently,
that's
but being
a good point.
accomplished differently. So it was just the next natural step for me to pursue. And, I have been mulling, is this something I want to start over with again? Or is there something else that's related and close? Because, again, I do want to keep pursuing, new knowledge and new understanding. But yeah, no, I gave it a good go for a few years. And, I've kept what I've written. Good to look back on.
Yeah.
But we'll see if I resurrect it or not. I do like to resurrect things.
You do, yeah. And you do like underserved. It's kind of the, Rocky story, if you will, just starting with little or nothing and making something great out of it. I love that sense of accomplishment, not just coming in to a winner, but making something a winner. Speaking of which, so you have some big news to share. You're starting your own business, Awaken RV.
Yes, yeah. So, several months ago, I stepped away from nuCamp, something I honestly thought I'd never do. I thought it was just, I'm going to ride into the sunset with nuCamp and live happily ever after.
Funny how that works, right?
Yeah, it just is. And, there's a couple things there, right? I woke up one day and I was like, I'm not having fun. And that might sound shallow, but the bottom line is I was just having a blast for so long.
Yeah.
And so I sort of dug into that a little bit. And
Yeah.
I was having the conversation with ownership. And, at the end of the day, I came to the realization that there's some things I want to do that I'm not going to be able to do here. And so I made the decision to leave. And it's funny, we talked about calendars, right? And, how a good, nice, tight calendar makes sure we get everything accomplished and have that good cadence. Well, the last several months have been sort of,
no calendar.
I don't know what to call it. All over the place, right? But what I've decided to do is something that was very similar in some of the other, previous experiences I had. Started with the teardrops, from 500 to 5,000. When we were in it for several years, we pivoted and looked at the truck camper industry, which had a very strong community aspect to it and was also very dry. So teardrops, were sort of just, under the radar. Truck campers were not, but they were white and brown and blocky.
Yeah.
Straight lines.
Yeah.
And I was like, what, let's liven this thing up. Let's bring in that great cabinetry. Let's bring in the European, modern aesthetics. Let's do everything composite. So we did that. And, we went from an absolute nobody to the, second and third largest truck camper supplier there was. So what I realized was I need to find a new niche. And I want that niche to have those similarities. I want there to be a cult-like following. I want a strong community. And I want this niche to have something that's been unredeemed, something that is just ripe for going after. And I was introduced to the molded fiberglass trailer, industry or niche. And, it's the Scamps of the world, it's the Casitas. Oliver is the premium product in the space. But as I assessed it, I saw a lot of vacancies, from form to function and even the finance element. Here in the U.S., there was nobody catering the middle of the market. You had Scamp and Casita. Two companies have been around for decades and basically, owning that whole market, selling things between $20,000 and $40,000. And then Oliver, they've been around, 17, 18 years, and they're making, a good deal less, but they're premium products. But they start maybe around $70,000 and go up to $110,000.
That's a huge jump.
So there's this $40,000 gap. And I'm like, there's a massive opportunity. You don't need be a rocket scientist to see it, right? And then looking at the form, a lot of the form are very capsule and pill shaped, and they're all white. And I'm coming from sort of these European-inspired caravans and, full of windows and different sleek lines, and there just wasn't any of it. And I'm like, why not? They all have like a belt line. Why? I was like, you know what? I'm going to investigate that. I want to do something different in this space. And then when you look at the function, I want to bring something that's just not there. Mm-hmm. So right now, if you look at it, there are trailers from 13 feet to 25 feet. If you look across all the different suppliers, nobody's doing anything above 25 feet. Why? And then within the units that are currently being made, nobody's offering something like a dry bath or like a beautiful front picture window that stretches up onto the roof. Why? And frankly, asking why, and sometimes just out of curiosity,
right?
And sometimes because I think I might know something, but I don't have any real standing to ask the question. Asking dumb questions has really helped me a lot.
Yeah.
So that's why I decided to look at that niche and pursue it. So it's been a little bit of a journey, right? Once I figured out where I wanted to go, I had to start, calling on some of my network and figuring out how am I getting started. So along the way, I've come across 3 different engineers, and one spent a lot of time in Europe. Did a large number of RVs here in the U.S. in the early 2000s. He started the project with me. He's still, walking alongside as an ancillary partner. I was able to dip into somebody who works at Google. He's been there for over a decade, worked on the balloon project, and he actually owns one of the high-end fiberglass trailers, the Oliver. He also actually owns a nuCamp, and that's how I met him. So he has
interesting,
and avid camper. And I just said, let's talk. What's missing?
Right.
What's missing for you? So then, he was able to provide tremendous feedback. And then I had a former employee of Winnebago, and he was able to provide a lot of expertise in ways that those gentlemen didn't. So we had this collective that we're able to start with, and we just a couple weeks ago were able to get our exterior shell milled out by an aerospace technology firm down in North Carolina and get it shipped up to our fiberglass facility. And we're working on getting that converted into a mold. We've got quite a number of molds to make after that. That's the external mold. We're going to have an interior hull as well. So then there's the interior. And then we're going to do something that's not really being done in the space. And we're going to make individual components within the interior mold that allows for flexibility. So now I don't have to own 25 different types of molds to change a floor plan. I have one mold,
right?
But then I can change the pieces and parts and this kind of dinette, this kind of bed setup, so on and so forth. So a lot of fun there. Engineering team, my fiberglass partner, he's located outside of Fort Wayne, Indiana. And then I've started to form my team here, my production team. We're not building anything probably for another month or so. We'll get into the first prototype. But I've got my finance and compliance guy, got an operational consultant, and then I've got a ton of people just cheering me on. Former dealers, suppliers, former partners, stepping up to say, what can I do? So it's been a great journey, a lot of unknowns, again, learning a lot, new space. But I think that some of the lessons I've learned over the years, I'll be able to apply and avoid those pitfalls. One thing I say is, hey, a forward failing, a servant leader. And the thing is, when you fail forward, because when you actually stand up, you're a little further ahead than where you were because you've learned a lesson that you didn't know before. So I think I'll be able to avoid some of those things that, some of the rocky times, not that they are not going to come here and there, but learned a lot over 17 years in this space. So really excited about what this is and what we're going to be able to introduce.
That's awesome. Well, first off, congrats.
Well, thank you.
I can see the excitement in your face. It takes me back to when I started my business. You see a problem and you have an idea of how to solve it, or you see an underserved market or industry or an area in, geographically, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go there and I'm going to work my tail off and create something really special. And hopefully it works out. But good for you. If anybody could do this, if I'm a betting man, which I'm not, but if I were, I'd put my dollars on you because you've been in the industry. You love a challenge. You love learning. Like, you love building a great culture. You appreciate and respect the community piece. I think that's important for somebody to come into something new. It almost reminds me of Subaru-ish, right? Probably the same types of people. Really,
Absolutely. Yeah.
You gotta be honest. You gotta be authentic, right? The message, the marketing, and the product, And it sounds like you're doing everything the right way. And interesting enough, all these, I look at your path. It's been windy, right? But it's led you to this. And it sounds like it's going to be incredible. What did your wife say? I'm curious. You have this very successful, stable job, 5 kids, and you come home and say, "Hey, babe, I think I'm gonna quit and start my own thing." What was that conversation like?
Yeah, again, I walked through it with her the same way I walked through it with the owner at nuCamp, and it was a few conversations, right? Yeah. And it's just like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Really? Why? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? We can't leave, and hey, I could go to Indiana. We're not going to Indiana. It's Ohio or Florida or nothing.
Oh, okay.
I started creating some guardrails, and I don't want to uproot my family per se. I didn't want to go to Indiana per se.
Right.
Just throwing the options out there. It's just, but at the end of the day, she put the fear aside, and she's like, no, Scott, I want this for you. She's like, you deserve this, for everything that you've ever done and the way that you think and the way that you care about people. You need to just start fresh with a brand new thing and make it happen again. And she's a proud wife. I say that humbly. I reread some of the cards she writes me every now and again, or I see my Facebook memories and I see these posts that she's made. I'm so proud of you. You're this and that, and all that kind of stuff. And I never really let that register on a day-to-day basis. But hearkening back on some of those conversations, she was grabbing the pom-poms and just saying, "Hey, go for it." Right. So yeah, it's great because you don't want to fight your family on something. Look, I spend all my time either at work or my family, right, or with my family. My hobby is my family. Right? Yeah. So, there's got to be harmony and alignment, and we're going together forward.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Good for you. You got to have that support at home. And I when I tell my story, my journey, my wife is the one that pushed. She planted the seed and said, "Hey, you did this for somebody else. Why don't you do it on your own?" I believe you can do that. And, to be an entrepreneur and to put yourself out there and your family, right? You're putting food on the table. You got to have that support. You got to have that strong foundation at home. So I figured that was going to be the answer, but I wanted to hear it anyhow. And I love the notes. My wife and I joke when we first met, and early on in the marriage, she would leave me like literal written notes She's not real tech savvy, which is great. I love it. And I've kept many of them. Yeah. And I actually have them around in my office so that every now and then I'll see them like, oh, it's just a nice piece of inspiration. And we talk, recently, and I'm like, I miss those notes. Like, feel free to, leave me one here and there. It doesn't have to be a novel, but I like them. So it's cool that you recognize them, appreciate them, and go back and reflect on them, because they are great pieces of inspiration, especially as this journey is going to take you into some unknowns, which you're not afraid of, right, for sure. So I appreciate just you as a person, the way that you operate. And it's funny, like with all the academia and the way that you grew up, you would think that you would be this very tight and calculated person. And there is that analytical side that I can definitely see, but you're an optimist. You love positivity and you love people and you're very authentic, and it just oozes through. I can see that you're just a caring guy. I'm blessed that we got to meet each other and have this conversation. And I'm super excited for you in this journey. And I'm going to be watching from the sidelines. And who knows? It might be time for me to end up with another camper. Yeah. I miss it. There's a lot to it. It's a way of life. And, we needed to buy a truck, and you got to winterize it and summerize it and store it somewhere, and there's a lot to it. But to get out on your own and just go, especially we have so many beautiful national parks and local parks that have camp. I mean, the places we went, I probably would have never gone had we not had a camper. And the people, everyone, it is a very tight-knit community. Strangers, you'll meet tons of strangers, and some of them you'll become good friends with, And there's nothing like sitting around a fire making s'mores for your kids that they don't eat.
Right, exactly. Right?
15 different ingredients and, sweating over the fire, and then they'll take one bite and like, I'm good, I'm going to bed. But no, this has been great, Scott. Any wisdom you want to leave with the audience? I know you're a lifelong learner. Are there any, as somebody who's young and getting into management or has potential or an opportunity to get into a leadership role, any guidance, advice, staple books or podcasts that you want to share?
Yeah, there's so much, right?
Right.
So I guess I'll give you just two things that more recently for me.
Okay.
Right. A friend of mine just came back from a leadership summit, and he took a picture of a slide when it was up there, and he said, I saw this and I thought of you. And it was, the answer is always yes until it is no. Right? So the part of being a pragmatic optimist is that it's not blind hope, it's calculated risk, and it's pushing through, right? But it's always going to be, this is going to work, and I'm going to make it work. And you keep doing that until you hit the dead end and say, well, I guess it wasn't yes. Right? Sometimes you'll get that. The second one is a book, Creating Things That Matter by David Edwards. And, he's a professor, a researcher, a scientist. And at the end of the day, he basically is saying, hey, look, when you're creating and innovating, creativity is about embracing uncertainty and pursuing curiosity and challenging the status quo. And, doing that for me was really enabled by, having all those interdisciplinary studies coupled with my life experiences. I wouldn't tell anybody to sign up for my life, but it's been fantastic, and it's fashioned me, obviously, into who I am. So yeah, just like embracing the uncertainty, pursuing curiosity, and challenging the norm. That's how you're going to create something that matters, something that lasts, something that brings you passion.
We'll leave it at that.
All righty.
That was well said. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Todd. Absolutely. No, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bolt Podcast. You're on an inspiring journey of growth, transformation, and joy, and I'm honored to be a part of it. If you found this episode valuable, please like, share it with your friends, and consider leaving a review. It means the world to us. For show notes, resources, and to subscribe to the weekly Motivational Monday newsletter, please visit toddbirch.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media at The Bolt with Todd B for more inspiration. Remember, real change doesn't happen overnight, folks. Start small, stay consistent, and watch as your growth unfolds. See you next time.